And there we go. Everybody should be in, should be able to hear us well. And you should have visibility on Ed Ngubane, our speaker for today on the DVT Insight sessions. These insight sessions are presented by DVT in order to share insights on current technology trends and related capabilities within the technology space. Today, we have Ed Ngubane with us. Ed leads our business analysis services within DVT. He's also the president of the South African chapter of the IIBA. He is a very educated gentleman with cum laude and MBA and numerous other qualifications and a lot of writing that he's done in this area. Ed has a vast amount of experience across information technology, having worked in systems analysis, development. In fact, if you name it, Ed has covered it in the SDLC. So consequently today, I think if people have even the toughest of questions that relate to technology and analysis, Ed is certainly going to be the one to be able to answer those questions. Ed, there's a fair setup for you, sir, in terms of introducing you to our audience today. And again, welcome to everybody that's joining us today to hear the call or hear the talk today from Ed on maturity in analysis. It is a different topic, but certainly one that I think Ed is rather passionate about in terms of showing organizations the way forward in analysis and the value from analysis in terms of systems and solutions. Ed, thank you so much for making time today to talk to our audience and share your insights.
Yeah, thank you so much, Carl. Just a disclaimer, no difficult questions, please. Yeah, but thank you very much, Carl. Thank you to everyone who's taken the time to kind of come and hear me talk. Today, I'm talking about the maturity level in terms of or as a profession. You know, we are all in analysis, or most of us that are on the call are in analysis. It's an area that you probably know that I'm passionate about. And I've put together these slides as something that we should be looking at. And I want to share this with you today and probably get your thoughts around and get you thinking about how do we look at an analysis practice from a maturity perspective. So let me just share my slides and then we can get going. So I hope you guys can see my slides. Please let me know if you can so that I can get started. Carl?
All good, Ed.
Okay,
running.
Thank you very much. Okay. So before I start, just navigate here. Okay. Why can't I navigate? So let me just stop sharing and share again. Because my navigation just seems to have frozen for a second. Share. Let me put this in a prism mode.
That's coming back up and running again, Ed. We can see that.
Okay.
Just for our audience, before Ed starts, we will be inviting your questions. Please, if you do have anything that you want to raise, just type that into the chat feature on Zoom, and I will present those through to Ed. And again, if you have any comments or questions in that space, please use the chat section. Thank you. Thanks, Ed.
Thank you, Carl. So before I start, let me just make acknowledgements. So this presentation, I put it together using a variety of sources, among them these three. Just, from an academic perspective, it's always very important to acknowledge your sources. So I do want to give credit to these three actual sources that I've used. One is the State of Business Analysis Practice and Organization. This is a research that was done by Laurie Lindbeck and Kathleen Hess in 2011. They actually did the research on this and looked across 6 different industries to then kind of establish a model that we can use to assess maturity of our practice. And of course, our Bible in business analysis, the BA book, we can't move without looking at the BA book, as well as the competency models. So these are primarily my sources that I've used, which I want to acknowledge before we get started. So I think the first question would be, why would you even look at or have the maturity model, or even look at it from a BA perspective? It's quite important that we have to evaluate the current state of analysis practice. Because we're so much in the thick of things, we don't take a moment to step back and actually look at the practice itself and look at how mature are we as a practice. And also look, you know, do that 360 view of how we're being perceived and how we're positioned within the organizations that we operate. Obviously, the reason for that is actually then to elevate our status, because that's a battle that's always continuous, the status of our practice. So we have to elevate that, and obviously not only elevate it, but also look at how then do we, from a long-term perspective, do we then move from one level to another level. It's quite important that we have to constantly evolve, constantly you know, try to better what we do as business analysts. And also then to be able to do that, we probably should then have a roadmap that will enable us to move from point A to point B. And with that, define the processes and the standards and whatever training we need to be able to move from point A to point B. So these are the objectives why you would actually go on an assessment maturity model, or yes, on an assessment of your maturity as a practice. But let's unpack this a little bit more. What exactly are we talking about here when we talk about the maturity level of an analysis practice? So there are few things that we have to take into account. Obviously, we cannot just look at this without context. Context is important, so we look at it in the context of these 4 streams. So we look at it from a standard tools and practices that are being used by a practice, and we look at it from the analysis services that is rendered by the practice itself to the organization. And we look at the organization because one organization is different from another organization. So you cannot expect that this is a one-size-fits-all approach. So you have to take into account various dynamics within an organization. And we also look at the growth and development aspect of the members that make up the practice. So these are the 4 streams. When we talk about the maturity assessment of an analysis practice, these are the 4 areas that we look at. And obviously the reason for that is we do that so that we can move to how then can we mature the practice, or how can we move it from one point to another point. So it's quite important that we look at what do we need to do to be able to move from A to B, and also importantly, how can we do it? Because it's not enough to look at what needs to be done, but we also need to look at how it should be done. That will take us to a desired state of analysis practice. But bear in mind, this is not a destination. This is something that should be done continuously by organizations, because you may feel that you are at this level this year, and maybe 2 years down the line, if you don't do things that you're supposed to be doing, you might be dropping to another level. So with that said, I just want to also then talk about how the world operates at the moment, especially in our space, in the business analysis space. So you'd find that in most cases, there is this operational level where there's execution, and this is where we actually implementing the plan, and the bulk of business analysis practitioners, you find that they're actually operating at this level, where they are busy churning the user stories, they are busy with the requirements, they are busy moving from one project to another project. So that is more of an operational level. Ideally, we would also like to just leave that a little bit up to maybe also involve them at the tactical level, where they are involved in the planning of that roadmap, as opposed to only just being executors, or they're busy with execution of the plan. So also being involved in planning what needs to happen. And ultimately, the ultimate point where we want to get to is also get them involved in the strategic aspect of the organization, where they help define. They not necessarily own the definition, but they contribute to defining the destination. This is where we are as an organization. This is where we're going. Remember, I did say, as I'm talking, at the back of your minds, keep those 4 streams, because I'll be constantly going back and forth and alluding to them or referring to them directly. So in this case, that aspect of the organization. So we need to be seen as business analysts to be more working towards contributing to the strategic direction of the organization. Obviously, the more we play in that space, that does talk to us moving a little bit higher in terms of our maturity of our practice, what we contribute to the organization. Not only, it's quite important, of course, to be operational, because there's still work that needs to be done on an operational level. We cannot have everyone sitting at a strategic level. I mean, when no one wants to do the work, everyone wants to be strategic thinkers. That's also not right, you know. But at the same time, so we need to find that right balance. We cannot afford to be only sitting at an operational level. We're not contributing to the growth and to the business itself in terms of help shape the organization. You know, we need to be seen to do that because, and obviously I'm sure by now you realize that it means if we are more focused on the operational level, we are operating at a lower level of maturity. So as I'm going along with this talk, I'll be bringing in the competence model, which I said I've referred to, and the BAA book as well, just to kind of show you how these things, you can marry them against each other to actually achieve what we want to achieve. But let's be realistic about one thing. You know, when we talk maturity, it's not something that we can today, we are at this point, tomorrow want to be there. We have to be realistic. We have to be methodical. We have to have a clear view in terms of what is our plan and how we need to get there. So firstly, we need to, so this is a process. It's not just something that happens overnight, and you need to give it time. Let me talk about time just for 1 second, digress a little bit. One of the, between money and time, for me, the most valuable currency is actually time, because you can do so many things if you have time, but if you don't have time, you can't. So you need to give things time. We need to give, even when the farmers plant, they plant the seed, but one thing that it's not in their control is time. They have to wait to see before they can harvest. Same here. In this maturity process, we need to be able to invest time. Firstly, let's identify and improve the fundamental processes first. So as business analysts, we need to be able to, what are the fundamental processes of this business? And let's contribute towards the improvement of those fundamental processes. And once we done, obviously, we then have to see how we influence and the rolling out of those processes enterprise-wide. You know, because if we do one thing and we do it well in one business unit, then we should be able to replicate it in other business units such that it impacts the entire enterprise. And then for that, we obviously need to have a clearly defined roadmap of manageable. So we need to have these things in chunks and say, this is what we're going to be doing for the next 6 months. And we kind of let it simmer, and then we go to the next one and the next one and the next one, up until a point where we feel we are making progress. Remember, we'll never get to a point where you say we are fully matured, because things happen. There's always things that are changing in the environment. There's always external factors that we need to take into account that will probably push us back. But then as long as we are conscious of those things and make an effort, it will definitely mean that we are continuously improving ourselves. So looking at the level of maturities as defined by the research that I spoke about earlier on when I started. So there are 4 levels of maturity. You'll find that there's different levels, but I'm focusing on these 4 levels, which I think they are kind of more realistic and generic, and they probably we can all relate to these. On one hand, being a former maths teacher, I'm talking of the X and the Y axis. On one hand, when you look at the Y axis, you see that we're talking in terms of your maturity level. You have your ML1, which is the maturity level 1, all the way to maturity level 4. And on your X-axis, you have the time, because time, as I mentioned earlier on, time is an important aspect to this. So you probably find that at level 1, this is where there's knowledge of our practice. And I'll talk in detail in the slides that follow. I'll talk more about this in detail, but I just want to give you a high level overview now so that you can navigate with me as I go through this talk and you follow what I'm saying. So at level 1, there's knowledge of business analysis. At level 2, this is when now people are starting to take us serious, because they realize that we actually are adding value and can add value to the organization. So our practice is kind of deemed to be at level 2 in that case. And when we are at the level 3 of the practice, it means now not only do they see that we can add value, but they see that we're actually essential, the essential services. I mean, all of us were in lockdown last year. We got to know which services are essential and which ones are not essential. So rest assured, I'm comforting you, although last year the government didn't say we're essential. I'm saying to you, we are essential. So when we are at this point of level 3, that's when we are seen as essential. And obviously the highest level being level 4, where we are innovative. We are in an organization that's innovative by nature. We contribute to the innovative nature of the organization. You will find that the bulk or the ideal, probably where we'll be toggling between would be level 2 and level 3. We don't want to be in level 1. We aspire to be in level 4, but we may not necessarily be in level 4 because that is also determined by the nature of the business that the organization we operate within finds itself. So there's quite a number of factors there. So this just gives you a high-level overview of those 4 levels of maturity. And as I'm talking, and I'm going to give you a bit more details, I think you need to reflect in terms of where you are. You need to reflect in terms of the practice and the things that you do, and kind of figure out where you are with this maturity in analysis space. Okay, so let's just go a little bit more into this one. The first one, maturity level 1, and so what are the typical characteristics of maturity level 1? So within organizations, this is where, like I said, here the organization intends to implement the practice. There's talks about, no, probably we do need BAs, but the key thing here is they are not really convinced that there's value in the BA practice. So even if they do, they do implement the BA practice, or maybe have 2 BAs, but this BA is actually used in a wrong way, because the organization does not really believe in the practice itself. So we don't want to be in this state. And if some of you are in an organization that's sitting at this stage, we need to do a lot of work to kind of uplift the practice. So that is your level 1. And if you take that, if you juxtapose that against what IIBA competency model talks about, because the competence model covers 5 areas. One of them, which is the basic level, is where there's general awareness of business analysis. So this could be HR could have probably some understanding of business analysis. Maybe marketing could have some, that there is something called business analysis, but I really don't know what these guys are up to. So from a competency model, we probably are sitting in this phase where we have general, which means there's a lot of work for us, people like myself and all of you who are evangelists in the PA career, to be actually preaching the gospel of business analysis. I'm actually preaching as we speak. Now, maturity level 2. Let's move to maturity level 2 and see what it entails. So maturity level 2, in this case, this is now we have this practice. Remember, if you go back and just imagine that graph that I displayed to you, we have this practice and there's a value that's attached to the practice. So, but how do we get to that value? Now we're driving standards. So when we are in maturity level 2, it means we as a practice, there's focus and we have a defined way of managing the requirements, whether business or system requirements. So in an organization, there is a defined way and there are standards that are set. And like I said, there is that value that we need. These guys do add value. And so we have kind of have a centralized way of managing the BA practice. And in most organizations, like I said before, this is probably where most organizations are sitting, because now we are also introducing the frameworks to manage requirements from a project, things like the BA Center of Excellence, where we talk templates, we talk processes, etc., etc. So this is where we are when we are talking maturity level 2. Compared to maturity level 1, there's a huge difference. I'm sure you can actually realize that here standards are there, standards have been sent out, we drive standards, we look after standards, we say what can we do better. And yeah, again, when you pull your competence model from IIBA, you can see that in this case, it means basically, or largely in the organization, we have a team that is made up of BAs that have got practical knowledge and BAs that are skilled. So these would be your junior to intermediate BAs. These would be BAs that, especially intermediates, because the standards, they can follow the standards and the templates and etc., etc. So we are in a much better state than we were in level 1, but we can still do better. So how do we move from level 1 to level 2? So probably that's what we should be also looking at, to say, what are the things that we need to put in place for us to say we are probably, let's say now you're stuck in level 1 where you want to kind of move to level 2. These are things that you should be thinking about. To say, for an example, have a clearly defined and implemented processes and tools to manage the requirements. So we know which tools we use within an organization. We have licenses for those tools. We've convinced Exco to pay for those licenses because we need them. And we have our processes. When business engages with us, they know how to engage with us. We've made sure that we've defined these processes. It's not a haphazard way of initiating projects, because that also contributes to a lot of confusion. And when you look at the BA book, then these will talk to these knowledge areas where we have an understanding of how to plan our BA activities, that analysis of planning and monitoring of activities. And we also how we engage, how we go about with our requirements analysis, as well as how do we then, from a process perspective, how do we elicit and collaborate. Our methodology is defined. It may not necessarily be perfect, but at least there's an understanding within the organization. And how do we manage these requirements from the point of entry to the point of exit, where we say, now we've tracked this whole requirement. How do we manage that? We do have a way of managing this. So that puts us in level 2. And also in terms of the management of the knowledge, because what we do is there's knowledge sharing, there's systems that we need to be managing, so that we have a process that's fully defined. I know if I'm not here, if Edward is not here today and someone starts, they know where to find things. It's not like everything is sitting in Edward's head. When Edward doesn't show up, he goes, takes with him a lot of IP in organization. So things like this, we know how to manage our change, we know how to archive change. We also know how to provide access to whatever, who needs what they need and where it is in terms of our process as business analysts. So this puts us in level 2. And also, after, what do we do once we've gone live with this? We've been working on these changes. Do we have a process that works? That how do we hand this over to operations? Because sometimes we hand over a project through, the BA throws the requirements over the fence and they walk away. So there's no support, et cetera, et cetera. So in this case, in level 2, we have support. We know that we probably need to babysit this thing for another 2 weeks before operation takes over holistic. But when they do take over, they know exactly what to do with it. When they get queries from the customer via the call center, they know how to, because we've defined those processes. Everything is, everyone knows what they need to look for. Or if we haven't, we have a way of supporting business once we go live. And most importantly, we also have a way that's defined in terms of how to bring new skills into the organization, because it's also important to look at that aspect of it, to say people are going to leave, people are going to get promoted, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's always the staff change. I did research when I was doing my MBA some years ago. My topic was on managing IT knowledge workers in the financial services industry. And one of the things that I was looking at that time was the tenure of knowledge workers in this space. And I established at that time that actually 18 months to 24 months, that's a tenure. So if you get anything above that from a knowledge worker, then you are really getting a lot out of it. But normally these people are in transit, so you have to be able to have a process, especially from a perspective of succession planning. You have to have a process after, how do I bring these skills into organization, and which skills do I bring? How do I balance my team such that there's succession planning? Because, and I always say this when I speak to our clients, because our clients say, no, we want senior PAs, one senior PAs, one senior PAs. It's good and well, but there's also a danger. You can't have a team that's made up of all senior PAs, because senior PAs are looking for the next step in their career, whether you like it or not. So if you have a team of 5 PAs and all of them are senior, there's a chance that you might lose all of them one after the other. Then you're back to square one. So make sure that your team is well balanced. You have your seniors, you have intermediates, you have your juniors. That means you have that succession planning. So sorry, I'm elaborating a lot. I'm getting carried away here. Let's move on to the next point. But anyway, I hope you get what I'm trying to say to you, ladies and gentlemen. This is level 2, and these are the things that we have to put in place to make sure that you're in level 2. Okay, so let's go to level 3. maturity level 3. So what things or characteristics would make us say we are in level 3? So here the focus is on the analysis service that we're rendering, because remember, again, go back to those 4 streams that I mentioned earlier on: analysis services, growth and development, organization, and processes, standards and processes, and also on the growth and development aspect. So now we start to bring these things into the play to be able to say, are we mature enough, and are we mature at level 3? So typically now, like I said earlier on, now this is when we are seen as an essential service that is needed so that there's an alignment in the project goals and the strategy that the organization wants to achieve. So now we no longer add value, we're no longer seen as just valuable, but we're seen as we can't move without these guys, because they have to align, they have to make sure that we are aligned all the time, because we're the guys that have to question the initiatives. When the product owner or the product manager or the product head comes and say, I want to do ABC, we need to be questioning them against the strategy of the organization. And if we are bold enough and if we understand the strategy of the organization, we're able to actually say, but how does this thing tie in with where we want to go as an organization? Because this is who we are, this is what we say we want to achieve, this is our vision, this is the customer base that we're servicing. These are the, but how does this thing fit in? So when we are at that point where we are seen as essential to say, we need these guys to tell us that we're still on track. And also, most importantly, like I said earlier on, now the idea is to be able to, that execution of the strategy, we need to make sure that it's enterprise-wide, so that the competency, the analysis competency assists with making sure that enterprise-wide we're doing the similar things. So I need to say this at this point in time to say, it does become, because there's always the conflict between the center of excellence and the community of practice. The center of excellence being more on the compliance top-down approach to say, these are the standards, these are the things that you'll do, these are the things you have to adhere to. You cannot achieve your maturity levels without having that center of excellence. Some organizations are lucky because they do have a dedicated COE and people driving the standards. Some are not. And when they are not, then we have to take ownership of that and say, this is what, but then it means we need to be influencing bottom up. We need to be influencing the executives so that they see why it's important to kind of do things this way within the organization. This is a problem that most organizations actually faced at the moment, that lack of consistency where in the practice and the experience is not the same. If I deal with Edward as a PA and I deal with Tab as a PA, I get 2 different versions of business analysis, dangerous. Again, so this talks to like kind of centralizing that the execution of strategy so that we as PAs are contributing to say, these are the things. Remember, I said here we're focusing on the service that we're rendering, the analysis service. If we go back to the top right of the screen, that analysis service talks to, do we understand what we're offering? Firstly, let's talk about that. Do we understand what we're offering? And do we understand that we need to package this thing such that it looks like and it feels like and it's seen as a same experience, regardless of, yes, there will be differences here and there, of course, but overall, the experience must be the same. But that we can't do that without the growth and development. Because remember, like I said, if you have a team of junior PAs, they're not going to take you to this stage. And so you need to balance that. So you need to be able to say, what do I have to do to grow and develop this team such that they elevate the service that they render. And here also, when we are at level 3, so the innovative products and services, they drive the execution of strategy, but we play a critical role in the management of the alignment. So we need to make sure that there is alignment, no matter how innovative that product is it still aligned? Because the product can be innovative and it can be exciting, but it can be misaligned to what we want to achieve as an organization. So these are the things that, again, think about as you're sitting and think about your organization and see whether, how far are you, again, on this chain. And this definitely talks to, when you look at the competence model from IIBA, it talks to the expert. Definitely. For me to be able to get this thing, it means I must be at an expert level. This talks to your senior PAs. Your senior PA should operate like senior PAs, guys. Senior PA doesn't mean because I've been doing it for 10 years, I'm a senior PA. I can be doing it for 10 years, but still be intermediate if I'm not thinking and performing like an expert in my field. So we need to challenge ourselves as business analysts. How do we grow? How do we get to a point where we're seen as experts? Now, how do we move from level 2 to level 3? Sorry, I just want to check how am I doing for time, because I don't want to overrun, because I've got a few things that I want to share with you. So let me put this next to me so that I can constantly check my time. So we move from, moving from level 2 to level 3. Like I said, here we cannot achieve this without that center of excellence, because that center of excellence will then will enforce governance to say, these are the things we do and this is how we should do them, and obviously try to cascade that across the enterprise. Because and you probably get a lot of resistance. Trust me, I've done this thing before and I've seen it in action. You'll get a lot of resistance, but because we are PAs, one of the skills that we have is influence and negotiate. We should be able to negotiate and influence and give people and give our stakeholders time to see these things in action. Because as they see us doing these things in other areas, in other BUs, then they realize, no, these things are succeeding. Now we want to do the same things. So it's not a walk in the park. I am fully aware of that. And also that management of resources and the vendors and contractors, obviously this is beyond our scope as PAs, but it is in the scope of the organization itself to say, how is the organization managing this? If it's centralized, that does contribute to us being in level 3 or getting to level 3. And now when you look at these tools now and processes, now we're adding, initially in the previous slide, we had 4 knowledge areas. Now we're adding 2 knowledge areas from IIBA and other things that we should be doing as business analysts. If we are operating and contributing at an enterprise level, we have BAs that are, when they look at the requirement, they look at the business unit, they look at how do we fit within, because let's take for an example, we servicing, because an organization, you find that it's segmented according to the different layers of the customers that they want to actually target. So that segmentation of the market talks to us understanding the enterprise analysis to say, but this requirement does not necessarily belong in this segment. It belongs to another segment, etc., etc. So that view, that understanding of the organization and how it operates and the market, our customers, it's quite important that we as business analysts start to think about that. And the solution, the relevance of the solution. Say sometimes we go off to get the off-the-shelf solution rather than build it in-house. That off-the-shelf solution, is it suitable for our business? Does it meet our needs, or does it call for us to change how we do things? Because in more cases than one, those off-the-shelf would actually change you. You as a business have to operate according to what this, the off-the-shelf solution dictates, not the other way around. Strategy analysis, we are so contributing to. We understand, we are in the conversations of what's the strategy and how is it shifting and how can we contribute. And the benefits realization, in most cases, we don't as PAs, we're so focused on throwing the requirements over the fence and getting stuff into production and walk away. What's the next user story that's down the line? What's the next sprint I'm involved in? But we don't make the time to, let's pull the reports, ask the product owners to say, please, can you CC me in the product performance? I just want to see how this product is performing once it has gone live. What's the uptake and why is it not performing the way it does? Probably this could be linked down all the way down to how it was designed, etc., etc. And portfolio management support, how we're supporting the portfolios within organizations. If we have all of these things in place, then we are on our way to say we are definitely operating at level 3 as a practice. And also we have that synergy between business and technology architecture. So these are in sync. We know the lay of the land, with the requirements. We can easily tell business that this requirement is a pie in the sky. The infrastructure that we have doesn't support this requirement. If you are insisting on this requirement, do you have 10 million budget? to make sure that there's upgrades in the architecture, etc., etc. So these we should be able to know. I mean, trust me, these are not difficult things. You just have to put your mind to it, you know. And also, we, like I said, we have our recruitment process in place, as well as you know, we are closely involved in the execution of the strategy in line with our colleagues, whether they are systems analysts, they are solutions architects, et cetera, et cetera. We understand where we're going, including the business architect, if you so happen to have one, because not all organizations have business architecture as a discipline. Also, our career path is planned, is mapped nicely within an organization. We can see what are the next steps and et cetera, et cetera. I'm actually glad that in the BA space itself, as a practice over the years, over the past 10 years, it has really progressed so well that there are clearly defined career paths. In the past, you know, a dev manager could just be managing BAs. And the BA, the only thing that they would think of as the next opportunity for them would be the project manager. But now we can see more and more and more that is, there are career paths that in the BA profession, which is a good thing for us in our profession. As well as if you are a systems analyst, also your path is clear in the organization. You know what are your next steps. So this takes us to the things that will probably then help us to get to maturity level 3. So the last one is maturity level 4. Maturity level 4, the characteristics of maturity level 4. Now we're starting to look at the organization. Like I said earlier on, this is more on the type and the nature of the organization, because we wouldn't get to this level by ourselves. We definitely need the organization. We need the organization. These are organizations that are outwardly focused and they take advantage of technology. These are innovative organizations, your fintechs. These are your fintechs, or the organizations that are well known to be innovative by nature. Because what they do is they recognize that the advanced business analysis skills and systems analysis skills, these are the skills that they need to use technology to gain that competitive edge or competitive advantage in the market. So the emphasis is actually on business and technology innovation throughout the entire enterprise. So if you operate, and obviously you would get, if you probably to look at a graph, you know, it will be a normal distribution curve. You know, if you talk of a normal distribution curve, where, you know, at the center you would have organization 2 and level 2 and level 3 being the majority. That would probably be, if you look at it from a histogram perspective, that'd be at your peaks would be level 2 and level 3, and at the bottom level 1, and probably on your at the tail of your distribution curve, you'd have probably level 4. So if you are in the space, you are very lucky, but it's probably quite a few that are here. So the bulk should be, I would probably say the healthier levels to find yourselves in is 2 and 3, always trying to navigate towards that. Just to close this one off, from a competency model perspective, this is where IIBA talks of strategists. So if you have more strategists, then you know that your BAs are operating as strategists, then they work with the innovative or innovators in the organization to how can we take advantage of technology to get where we want to get to. So moving from level 3 to level 4, so in this case, this is where the opportunities are converted into innovative business solutions. This is just the nature of the organization. This is how then we can say now we definitely are level 4, where most of these opportunities, you know, we more in our by nature, it's in the DNA of the organization, and we all know not all organizations are innovative by nature. The strategy is translated into breakthrough process and technology. So the next strategy is forged to achieve innovation. So here we eat and breathe innovation. Innovation is used to maintain competitive advantage, and we play a significant part in one way or the other to achieve this. So this is the first part that I want to talk to you about. I just want to wrap up in use the next 10 minutes or 8 minutes just to quickly take you through how we go about from a DVT perspective, assessing the maturity level of a practice. So what we do, we adopt a qualitative approach, because the idea is to gain insights, because we have to understand how the organization operates to be able to contribute to how it can move from one level to the other. Typically, it involves two phases. You have a linear approach, and then you have an iterative approach. Those phases would be, your linear approach would be made up of a few phases. You have to collect data, you have to do the analysis, and then write a report. Depending on the organization, sometimes we, after we collect the data and we do some techniques to collect data, we produce a report and we move on to the next phase. And obviously the last phase, which is iterative, is then where we provide intervention and support, and to say, these are the things that you should be doing. But again, like I said earlier on, time plays a critical factor in this. These slides, there's a bit of detail, but I just wanted to give you an overview. I'm not going to go into the details of these slides, what happens here, but just in terms of breaking down the phases. So data collection phase would have an observation phase. Observation phase, there's things that you'll be observing, and obviously there's an output coming out of that observation phase, as well as then the next phase is made up of interviews and workshop phase, where we collect data. So some of you have done research, which I think most of you have, especially the qualitative research, you know that these are various techniques that you can use using interviews, but then observation and the workshops. And then we then move into the analysis phase as well as the recommendation phase. This can take anything between 2 to 4 months, depending on the size of the organization and the nature of the organization. So like I said, I just wanted to give you a high level overview of these phases in terms of how do we go about doing the assessment. So that brings me to the end. I had to rush because I didn't want to run out of time. So I see that at least I did manage to fit everything in within that hour. So Carl, over to you if there are any questions or comments.
Indeed, Ed, thank you so much for that presentation. Ed, I think if we just stop the press at this point in time, then at least we get to see you full screen. There we go. That's exactly what we're looking for. Ed, after all that, I guess the first question that comes to mind, and sorry, folks, I'm jumping in ahead of the queue, but I will just remind everyone, if you do have questions for Ed, just type them into the chat window, please, and I'll pick them up there and pose those through to Ed for you. Ed, from my side, the maturity level assessment and where that positions an organization, are there other metrics that you're aware of that go towards sort of the traditional type of business investment decision on sort of return on investment or other metrics like that, that can be used to go back to executives in an organization to say to them, if you move your organization up through the levels of maturity, this is what you can see in terms of that investment coming back to you in the way of, I don't know, shorter times to development of solutions or improved quality on systems?
So yes, Kylie, you're spot on, because remember, when we do the actual assessment, that's when we go a little bit lower in terms of the details, the type of questions, the things that we unearth. And things exactly like what you mentioned, the return on investment, because if we tweak this aspect and we make it better, there is a cost associated to it. The cost, if you save time, you save money. And if you uplift the level of your practice and business analysis, it means you ensure quality of requirements because the PAs understand. And if you ensure quality of the requirements, it means it gets done right the first time, which also hits the bottom line, because when you do things right the first time, you save on money. Because if you have to go back and do them again, there's a cost. Everything has got a cost associated to it. We just need to quantify it, and we just need to bring it to the fore so that the executives can understand. Because executives, they always look at it from a bottom line, the rands and cents.
Okay, thanks, Ed. And Ed, in terms of the change within the business analyst function or the role itself, right? I know we've had a couple of conversations around that ourselves, but are there particular things that are coming along that are relatively new additions to the business analyst skill set that are fundamentally helping business organizations see that value in the analysis side? And I'm thinking particularly things like data analysis, continuous improvement, that type of thing.
Absolutely, you're spot on. So there are 3 or 4 areas where at the moment are typical in business analysis in terms of the growth, in terms of where the profession is going. One of them, and these are things that IIBA actually is putting out there. One of them is cybersecurity, and the other one we've actually mentioned now, data analysis. More and more organizations are looking for business analysts that are skilled in data, that understand data, that can work with data, because for organizations it's expensive to have a business analyst, have a systems analyst, have a data analyst. You know, like we said before, it's always about saving costs. So they're actually looking for 3-in-1. If you know about it. I mean, back in the day, and probably still in some organizations, they still exist, but back in the day, we used to have, there were dedicated process analysts, process engineers, but we're seeing that being taken over by RPA to some extent. So that skill is something that BAs need to equip themselves with. And cybersecurity, the world as it is now, we've gone digital, we are online, which means that there's a huge risk that organizations are exposed to. As a result, now we need to tighten security around the cyberspace. And BAs need to be at the forefront of understanding what cybersecurity is all about and how they can contribute and help organizations move in that direction. And another one, which is launching soon from IIBA perspective, is product ownership. Because there's always this conversation between business analysts and product ownership. To what extent or to what level must the BA go in terms of product ownership? So it's an integrated part of business analysis. This you cannot do without. That is why business IIBA is also launching certification around that. And also from a technical perspective, like I said earlier on, the systems analysis part, at this point in time, we find that if you're a business analyst and you don't have the technical background, you struggle a lot. And more clients do want that. So these are the things, because again, it's easier conversations. If you have the technical background with the dev guys, you can understand them and their respect more than anything, because dev don't want to speak to someone that feel that this person doesn't get what I'm saying. You know, it's just a waste of my time, because explain this thing to him or today, next week I'm gonna explain the same thing. You know, explain it once to this person and they get it. And they explain it to business in a way that business can understand it. So those areas are the core skills that we see the market demands out of the business analyst. You have to know what's going on in the cyberspace. You have to know what's going on in the data space. You have to know what's going on in the technical space, to a point where most recently one of our clients, Carl, asked the question, is there still something called a systems analyst? But I know that some organizations, they still have those. And the question is coming from the point that, do I have to hire a systems analyst and a business analyst? Why can't I just get 2 from this person? So that is quite important. And also, we cannot divorce ourselves from product ownership. It's a huge topic on its own. So Carl, to answer your question, definitely there are things that are on the horizon, and we need to be at the forefront of those as they develop as business analysts.
Fantastic. All right, Ed, a question from Zalila. She's asking, when you're conducting a maturity level assessment and regarding the ways of working, do you consider the full SDLC or analysis only?
No, the full, because it's in context. Remember, going back to those 4 streams, organization, you have to, context is important. So you have to consider, you can't just consider the piece of analysis, because that analysis doesn't happen in isolation. It happens within the context of an organization. So yes, definitely the organization is taken into account, and that talks to the delivery methodology that the organization is using. It could be agile, it could be a hybrid, it could be waterfall, but those is also taken into account.
Okay, thanks, Ed. And the second part of the question from Zalila was, who's usually the sponsor for maturity assessment in the organization?
Good question. The person who feels the pain the most.
A good answer. A good answer.
So if you within an organization you feel the pain the most about the BA practice, you definitely are going to be at the forefront of sponsoring or convincing your executive to pay for it. It could even be the head of business analyst or the BA manager or whatever, but you are the one who's feeling the pain the most.
Okay. Ed, Ed, your question from Ruth is, what have you found as a turning point for a company to decide to employ BAs? And can you give an example? Because Ruth is pretty sure that it's different in each organization and what their requirements may be before they see the value of business analysts.
Thanks, Ruth. The answer is quite simple. It's lessons learned, it's money spent, it's money wasted. Because, and this is where our value always just comes out, because when guys initially say, no, but we don't need the BAs, and they go ahead, they do their user stories, and they write what, because they think BAs just write requirements without doing a proper analysis. Remember, when I talk about the analysis, one of the papers that I wrote, I have this big thing that I cover in terms of understanding business, but understanding business. And understanding business starts from the top all the way down, and technology is just a piece of it. So, Ruth, to answer your question, when the people that pay the money feel that they're spending money and wasting it, because this thing has got to be done over and over and over and over again, because the dev guys or the marketing manager or whoever said we can do it, but now it doesn't meet the market needs. You miss the market. You don't get your customers, or your customers drop off, or the product just doesn't take off, etc., etc. So it is something that if they don't get it the first time, they have to pay the price, and they get it, they learn the hard way.
Thanks, Ed. There's a question from Tariq, which is definitely going to appeal to your academic side. So I'm going to ask you, Ed, to make sure you answer this in 30 seconds or less, so that we do get any final questions in. Tariq's question was, any thoughts on adding something like this in the next version of the BA body of knowledge?
Wow. Wow. That's a big question. I don't know, but you can propose it to IIBA. Definitely. It's something that to take back to IIBA and propose, because it's not covered at the moment, right, in the BA book. So it's something that, I mean, I can propose it because I do have the benefit of having access to IIBA Global.
All right, there we go, Ed. You showed the restraint I asked for that. I know that there's a lot more from you on that one. Ed, I'm going to just throw in another question here. For any organization, and particularly probably the proponents of business analysis within an organization, what are going to be the major challenges to progression of maturity in the organization that you're aware of?
Is the lack of patience to want to see the results overnight. This is always the pitfall all the time. So when we do this assessment, this is something that we try to kind of implant, to say, you have to give this thing time. And by time, I mean, you have to give it around 2 years without being unrealistic. Let's just be honest. Give it 2 years, because it takes that long to move from one level to another, because you're changing behavior, and you don't change behavior overnight. And in the process, there will be interruptions, because people are going to leave. You're going to hire new staff. So take into account all those things. You know? So if you are not realistic and want to see a result over 6 months, it's always going to be frustrating to you.
Okay. And Ed, for perhaps the folks that are newest into the space in terms of business analysis, where they see this framework coming out and they kind of go, great, I can see how the framework is going to benefit the organization in terms of recognizing value from business analysis, elevating the participation of business analysts up into the different areas. So from operational through tactical through strategic. But for somebody that's new in the role, what would you say would be the best investment of their time and perhaps training and education to enable them to participate in that kind of elevation of the practice?
So there's quite a few things. One of them, which obviously I don't talk about here, but we offer at DVT. We also do offer individual BA assessments. Those are targeted at individuals, assessing where you at as a BA and what are the gaps. And we then help you to close the gaps. And also those are built around the IIBA knowledge areas. So that's one aspect to it. The other aspect is get out there, upskill yourself, get involved with IIBA South Africa. I know, so I'm wearing two hats. I'm wearing IIBA and I'm wearing DVT. And I always talk about these things at the same time. So because there are a lot of events that IIBA offers that are meant to upskill BAs for free, over and above the training that you need to do. And also make sure that within your organization, you ask around, identify people that you see ahead of you and ask them to help you. You'll be surprised how many people are willing to help others for free, only if you ask.
Fantastic. I'm just going to give a last moment if anybody has any final questions, because we are right on time for the end of our session today. And nothing immediately there. Ed, then just on behalf of DVT and the folks that have attended today, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your obvious passion for business analysis within organizations. That comes through every time we have you talking to an audience on the topic. So thank you again for that. And to the folks that attended today, thank you for joining our DVT Insight session. I'm sure that you enjoyed that as much as I did in terms of hearing Ed talk on his favorite subject. We invite you to join us again on one of our subsequent sessions that come up on a regular basis, and I am sure that we will have Ed presenting again in the very near future. Ed, thank you, and to our audience, thank you.
Thank you very much, Carl. Thanks everyone for attending, and particular thanks. I know we have someone attending from the UK, Velam. Thank you very much for making the time and effort. Thanks, guys. It was nice chatting to you.
There was a question there. Will we share the presentation? Yes, each of our Insight sessions is recorded and that will be posted and shared. The link will be sent through to all participants from today's session. So again, thank you. I hope you enjoyed the session and have a great day.